from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
The first 100 days of a new administration, reaction from farm country, and agribusiness preparing for a new month of trade.
I think the grower's going to find out maybe in a few weeks that we planted the crop.
Yeah.
Wouldn't bet against them. No matter how it goes in, it'll go in.
Machinery Pete looks at good condition used combines and some solid auction prices. And there's a mystery brewing under this muck, disappearing worms, today on In the Country.
Agday, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The first 100 days of the Donald Trump presidency is now in the books. The first benchmark period closed over the weekend following a flurry of executive orders directly associated with the nation's farmers and ranchers. Farm Journal Media has tracked the farmers' sentiment of Donald Trump since mid-2015. Now, several polls throughout 2015 and 16 showed he was the clear favorite candidate within the agriculture industry. Now, with the president having wrapped up his first 100 days in office, is farm country still standing by its selection? In an exclusive Farm Journal Media Pulse poll of 1,200 people, support among farmers has remained largely intact. When asked to grade his first 100 days, 43% gave the president an A, another 30% gives him the grade of B, 12% gave the president a C, and the balance assigned a D or F. The president's approval rating at the national level is much lower than it is in farm country. According to a Gallup poll from April 25th, his approval rating is 39%.
Certainly from an agricultural perspective, deregulation and rolling back some of the very onerous regulations that agriculturalists face was very, very important.
The president's pick to run USDA's Sonny Perdue says he agrees the president is living up to his promises. Already rolling up his sleeves and speaking across the country, Perdue says he's advocating for agriculture both from the road and at the White House, even weighing in on the recent NAFTA issue.
He asked of me what my advice was and trying to determine the best route to go, and I advised him of what the benefits were to agriculture in some areas and what the hits were. That's been all positive. It's been a net positive gain for agriculture, certainly in the grains and other things, certainly in fruits and vegetables and those kinds of things. It's a deficit. He believes certainly that in a country that's abundantly producing as America is, we should have a surplus, and he's determined to get that.
Perdue says he believes Trump loves to make a deal, and some of his language is meant to work in his favor. Even former U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman recently telling Canada that trade negotiations with the U.S. will be much less predictable with the new administration. Today marks the first day that Grassland Dairy is no longer accepting milk from roughly 70 producers in Wisconsin and Minnesota. The dairy telling farmers a month ago that it would no longer accept their milk. Grassland said its orders were cut because of a new Canadian policy that encourages processors to utilize Canada's domestic milk supply instead of importing ultra-filtered milk from the U.S. Most of those producers have since found new processors, but it's been a worry-filled month for many.
Something should have been negotiated out some time ago already, versus a trade war don't accomplish much either. Everybody loses there then.
The Prosser family telling Agday on Friday that the co-op Dairy Farmers of America has agreed to take their milk. However, it's at a lower price than what they were getting from Grassland. The Prossers sold their milk to Grassland for a dozen years. President Trump proposed dramatic cuts in the taxes paid by corporations big and small. His administration says the overhaul will spur economic growth and bring jobs and prosperity to America's middle class. But that plan is short on details at this point, and Betsy Gibbon looks at the potential impact and what it could mean for farmers.
The tax plan is in its early stages and still requires a vote and a debate in Congress. The tax experts say right now there are a lot of fuzzy details we still don't know. A formal announcement.
President Trump has made tax reform a priority.
Until we have more details, it is very hard for me to get too excited about this tax plan.
A lower tax rate is promised in the proposed tax plan, but Nefer says we don't know the impact just yet.
The key is we know that likely the top tax rate for farmers is going to come down. We just don't know what income it's going to be applied to. Is it going to be applied to all farm income, including the cash rent income for renting your farm to your farm, so to speak? We just don't know. Individual wage earners, those type of taxpayers are going to see a small tax reduction. Farmers, other businesses, if this goes through, would likely see a very large tax decrease.
When it comes to Section 179, Nefer says it has not been discussed much and will likely have provisions.
I think Section 179 would probably be at least the $1 million level. I think Trump likes the idea of providing for immediate expensing. But again, if he wants to drop that top rate down to 15%, they may not go all the way like the House does. But then if your top tax rate is 15%, Section 179 really isn't that big of a benefit like it used to be anyway when the top rate was 39.6%.
But what may be the biggest topic is the estate tax, also known as the death tax, which some farmers criticize as a hardship.
The threat of being hit by the death tax leads small business owners and farmers in this country to waste countless hours and resources on complicated estate planning to make sure their children aren't hit with a huge tax when they die.
Nefer says less than 10% of farm families in the U.S. would potentially get hit with the estate tax. He says eliminating it sounds good in theory, but farmers need more details.
If they eliminated the estate tax but got rid of the step-up in bases or applied some type of capital gains tax at death, that would be a large tax increase for a lot of our farm families out there.
Nefer says it looks as if this tax plan will help farmers who make $1, $2, or even $5 million or more per year, and it's likely to be a big tax savings for those farmers getting close to retirement.
Snow was swirling around the Midwest over the weekend. Mike Hoffman has an update in today's Crop Comments. Mike?
Good morning, Clinton. It looks a lot like winter in the Corn Belt. Here's a picture from central Nebraska. Casey Cooksley sent us this photo on Friday when it snowed heavy that day. Casey says he hasn't planted, but many farmers have quite a bit of corn already in the ground. Here's a picture of frosted wheat from Zeb Larson in Ottawa County, Kansas. The wheat is booted and heading. USDA releases its latest crop progress report later this afternoon. And here's one photo that looks more like spring, but the weather may not stay for that long in the southeastern part of South Dakota. Tom Wiebesek of Davis, South Dakota is sending us a picture of his calves. He says, I guess this is one way to get your mama's attention. I would say so. Here's the drought monitor this week. You can see very little drought across the country. The worst is in Florida and a few spots in the southeast. We'll show you who gets the rain and who doesn't as we head through this week, coming up with my forecast. But first, here are some hometown temps.
With market prices constantly changing, it's important to know where current prices stand. Get market prices delivered right to your mobile phone. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
When we come back, we'll look at last week's weather impacts on planning and how to prepare as we begin the key month of the spring season. And later, big-time anglers are having a big problem finding their preferred bait. We're off to the land of the lobster to explain the worm mystery.
Stay tuned, folks. Coming up, I'll tell you about a pair of combines that sold at auction last week. This is Machinery Pete, inviting you to check out my new website, machinerypete.com. Offering farmers tens of thousands of used equipment listings to search, let Machinery Pete help you find and value your next piece of used equipment.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk, we have Tommy Grisapi, Advanced Trading, and Brian Split with Allendale. Tommy, we'll start with you. As we prepare for this week ahead, what's on your mind as we start a new month here in May?
A new month in May, I think the grower's going to find out maybe in a few weeks that we planted the crop.
Yeah.
Wouldn't bet against them. No matter how it goes in, it'll go in. And then what leg does the corn market have to stand on with all these old crop bushels, big crop coming in South America, and the potential for another record crop this year, or at least a trendline yield crop. So what's corn's leg to stand in, and then see how the markets react to that.
Yeah, and Brian, what about you? What are you watching?
Yeah, to speak quickly to the weather issue, I think from a fund manager perspective, I tend to think that they won't get too concerned about late planting until we get past that May 10th to 15th time frame.
Sure.
I think you have to be less than 50% planted around then. That's statistically when you're going to see yield deterioration. Until that, probably not a major issue. But as far as what we're looking at moving ahead, we are going to get the first official government numbers for our new crop carryout. That's going to be on the May WASDE report. And I think that could be a catalyst for another leg down in soybeans. So I do think the month of May could have soybean futures trading, 40 to 50 cents lower from current values, maybe testing $9.
Okay. Tommy, what do you think about the general economy and the flow of money in and out of these markets? What are you watching there?
Yeah, I watched earnings come out yesterday with some of the big tech names, Microsoft, Google. You just can't stop these stocks. And so commodities right now aren't really popular. Watching crude oil this week, it dropped several dollars, and everyone working with a retirement account, the general working population of America is getting older. They're saving money. You don't ever hear anyone talk about, hey, I'm going to invest in commodities. But everyone all of a sudden is an expert on the stocks again. So until that changes, commodities could just be tossed to the side, and it's just something that you're able to buy low to make things and produce an end product. And those companies are all public companies who do that.
Right. Brian, last word. What do you think about the coming weeks?
Well, I think you have to be mindful that, like Tommy had said, once we get through planning, that idea of, all right, we've got planning delays, whether or not that actually comes to fruition, that story is gone. So now the narrative does change to what do we do with the old crop? And very similar to 2015, the funds are short all three commodities right now. I'd expect that to continue going into the end of the quarter, but I do still think that we have a lot of opportunity during a very short-lived, quick rally during summer to use as a marketing opportunity.
All right, guys, appreciate the perspective today. We'll be back with more Agday in just a minute.
Interested in spending a day with a trader? Call Tommy Grisafi at 800-664-4383. To talk to Brian Splitt one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-551-4626 or email him at bsplit@allendale-inc.com.
Visit farmjournalpro.com. Trusted analysis, professional insight. farmjournalpro.com.
Welcome back to Agday. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, you rained us out of baseball over the weekend. We've got more games this week. How's it look as far as rain goes?
Yeah, Clinton's a great coach, I would say. I haven't seen one.
Well, I try. I do my best.
That's right. You try. Well, there's obviously been some rain this past week across many parts of the country. You can see, especially in a strip from southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, across Tennessee into the Carolinas. That's who got the rain. From past Saturday through this past Friday, and so that's a 7-day period there. Lots of rain across the Tennessee Valley, at least that's where it was centered. As we head through this week then, we're going to see a big trough and a big wet storm system starting off over the Great Lakes and the East Coast out ahead of this trough. That will move slowly toward the northeast. Then we see things kind of change a little bit, and this is different than it was last week. I'll show you the jet stream is now projected to show another trough digging into the east, not into the northern Rockies. That's a big difference. That means you stay warm out west later on this week, and you end up with the chilly weather continuing in the eastern portions of the country. As we head toward next week then, I don't see anything major, kind of a ridge in the east and a little bit of a trough out west. Let's take a look at temperatures this week. I'm going below normal from eastern Texas, most of Oklahoma, throughout most of the Mississippi Valley, Great Lakes, Tennessee, Ohio Valley, all the way down to the Gulf Coast, near normal on the eastern seaboard, and then from the far northwestern plains through most of the west. Above normal temperatures are expected. Precipitation this week, mainly because of that first storm, but then there's that secondary one that kind of goes up the East Coast. So we're going above normal, throughout that area, as well as the northern Great Lakes. That's early in the week, and then it dries off. Below normal then, back behind this system into the central plains and central Mississippi Valley, and then below normal out west. I'm going near normal in that little strip there because there's a weak system kind of diving through that area until it becomes that major storm along the East Coast. Let's go in our 90-day outlook. We'll start off with May. Below normal temperatures expected over the northern plains. Above normal, mid-Atlantic, southeast, through the southern portions of Texas into southern California. June temperatures above normal for the northern plains and most areas east of the Mississippi Valley. As you can see there, below normal only for far northwestern Montana. And I've taken the below normal area off for July. I'm going above normal out west, continental divide westward, and then in the east from the Great Lakes and throughout the eastern seaboard. As far as precipitation over the next 90 days, above normal for the northeastern Rockies from Colorado northward, northern plains through the northern Great Lakes, and also mid-Atlantic back into Texas, below normal in parts of the far southwest, especially West Texas and the far northwestern portions of the country. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Boise, Idaho. First of all, partly sunny and very pleasant. High temperature of 63. Fort Scott, Kansas, I should say, variably cloudy, breezy, and mild with a high of 62. And Rochester, New York, warm with a shower or thunderstorm possible, high around 79 degrees.
Machinery Pete is up next with a look at some very strong prices for John Deere harvesters. Meanwhile, the harvest for a certain variety of worms is falling short this season, and that's causing problems for sportsmen. Angling for answers later on Agday.
Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
Farm incomes may not be great, but Machinery Pete says auction prices are holding steady for good condition machinery. Here's Greg.
I continue to see very strong sale pricing on good condition used combines. Now let's talk about two examples from last week. Well, here's a picture of a 2011 model John Deere 9770 STS with 1,421 engine hours on it. Now this sold on the BigIron.com online sale last Wednesday, and this combine was from South Central Nebraska, and it sold for $133,750. Now folks, that's pretty much right on the money. If we narrow things down in our MachineryPete.com auction price data, last year, the average price on a 2011 model 9770 with between 1,200 and 1,700 engine hours was $134,750. So again, the one on Wednesday, pretty much right on the money. Now the day before that, so last Tuesday, if we talk a later model unit on a farm auction up in east central North Dakota, this 2016 John Deere S680, 723 engine hours on it, sold for $292,000, and folks, that's with no head. So very strong hard cash auction sale price there, competitive bidding. In fact, we have a video of it on our MachineryPete.com website, so check it out.
All right, thanks, Greg. And big-time fishermen are struggling to find their choice bait. We'll dig through some mud and muck looking for answers.
In the country. Brought to you by Kubota. Learn more about Kubota SSV Series skid steers at Kubota.com or demo one at your local Kubota dealer today.
A mysterious drop in the harvest of two of the most popular worms for sport fishermen is proving expensive for anglers and threatening a way of life in Maine. Harvesters dig the worms out of coastal muck so they can be sold all over the world. Terry Shea is fishing for answers to the cause of the disappearance.
On the coastal mudflats of Maine, Dan Harrington makes his living digging for worms. But he's not looking for just any worms.
Just don't ask me to eat one.
He's looking for the bloodworms and sandworms favored by sport fishermen around the world.
It's the prize. You know, this is hunter-gathering. When you go hunting, you're not hunting for just okay. You're hunting for the best you can find.
Maine is best known for lobsters, but is also the largest supplier of marine worms in the U.S. But Harrington and his fellow wormers haven't been finding as many worms as they used to. Since 2004, Maine's catch of bloodworms has dropped by more than half, and sandworms, also known as pileworms, have dropped by 2/3. Scientists say a number of factors could explain the decline, including pollution, invasive crabs eating the worms, or changes in the marine environment.
This decline is worth watching because if it continues and there's been no change in effort by fishermen, then this indicates that there is, something going on which is different than in the past, and we should be concerned about that.
Stuff's not even from this coast.
The shrinking worm harvest is being felt across the country. Glenn Shaderis buys marine worms from Maine and sells them to bait shops across Northern California. But he can't get enough to satisfy his customers.
At the end of the day, if I had more bloodworms and pileworms and I could meet the demands of all of my customers, that would be great for us. But right now, we'll just keep bringing in what we can, and we'll split it up as fair as we can and just try to help ourselves and our customers to the best we can.
Chris Folster is one of those customers whose bait shop is feeling the shortage, especially now at the peak of striped bass fishing season.
And if you don't have pileworms, you don't have the bait everybody wants. It's the #1 bait for stripers at the moment. got to have them. If customers come in and we don't have them, they leave.
As scientists try to unearth the reasons behind the decline, Maine harvesters worry that a tough job could get even tougher. Terry Che, Associated Press.
Very interesting. We're sure glad you tuned in this morning and spent some time with us on a Monday. From all of us here at Agday, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day in farm country.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.